I work with 7 to 8 figure entrepreneurs in the online business coaching space. The most important thing that I did, going back to my journey, was I was in my worst point in life, and it was hell. It was hell. And at that point, I didn't really want to continue editing.
We have Joshua J.,
the creatorpreneur and an S-tier video editor,
who helps video editors and creatives scale to $5,000 a month and beyond.
So I'm about to drop some sauce. You can be the best editor in the world, but if you don't have you're cooked.
What would you say is the thing that all the students you have that succeed have been able to share between them?
I think the biggest trait is just understanding business and understanding that the inputs today will lead into outputs in like 3-4 months.
So we'll go into how you got to where you are now, some of the things you currently do, get a lot of value from some of the answers and tips that you're able to put across. But before anything, just to give some context, aside from being the editor for my channel, what is it that you do?
So I work with 7 to 8 figure entrepreneurs in the online business coaching space. That's the niche that I operate in. I also have my own personal brand where I post my own content, edit my own videos, and I have a community of editors where I help them upskill. I help them start their personal brand as well, and I teach them how to monetize, right? And we've gotten a bunch of results and everything. And just recently, one of our editors joined Devin Jatho's team. If you don't know who that is, he is probably the biggest guy in the online space when it comes to going viral and everything. So yeah, that is what I do outside of editing for you.
Big win. And we'll definitely go into that a lot more. We'll go into CATNA a lot more. We have a little giveaway to announce as well that we'll be mentioning in a bit. But just to get us going into your story in general, what would you say was the thing that actually got you into editing and into this journey that you've been on in the first place?
So to be truthful, I never really intended to get into editing. I just recently graduated university a year ago or 2 years ago. I didn't know the life direction I was going to go into, but luckily I had a friend who was already in the online space, and he reached out to me with the intention of starting a content agency. For those of you who don't know what a content agency is, we take care of their YouTube videos, their reels. We like to call it short form and long form content. And we do the whole social media shebang, right? And that's how I got into it. I started editing from my phone because, again, like I didn't have the facilities to edit on a laptop. I didn't have the best laptop or anything. My Mac was like 10 years old, and you couldn't do stuff on it. You know, it was pretty bad. And yeah, I was editing for 3 clients. They required 3 videos a day. So I was editing 9 videos in total. And it was hell. It was hell. And at that point, I didn't really want to continue editing. So we hired some other editors from the Philippines, and I became a manager. So I didn't really learn the skill set of editing until 9 months, or no, a year ago, this time last year. That's when I actually dialed in the skill set of editing.
So it was only this time last year that you downloaded CapCut on a laptop for the first time. So, you know, that concept, until you told me a few hours back and we were speaking, is just crazy to me. I didn't even know, especially because we were working together on a different project at the time, and you were already putting together like really high quality pieces for us. And, you know, to find out that that was being done from your phone is crazy. But moving forward with the story a little bit, from the moment you downloaded CapCut on the laptop to get to where you are now, what would you say generally were the steps you took to actually be able to develop into the editor you've become?
Well, if I was to reverse engineer the transformation, first of all, you have to be passionate about what you do, because if you want to pursue something and become very skilled at it, there has to be some form of passion in there, right? Or else you're just going to burn out and drop it the next day and go chase the next shiny object, right? I think the most important thing that I did, going back to my journey, was editing a video every single day. But in every single edit, I would implement something new. You know, I wouldn't necessarily go back to a previous animation or previous style that I tried to attempted. And what that did is it forced me to become uncomfortable in terms of creative ideation. It forced me to think of new ideas, and the overall benefit was I created this backlog of styles, animations in my mind that I can go to whenever I edit a video now. So I don't spend like hours thinking of ideas, thinking of concepts in my mind, because I've edited thousands of videos and edited thousands of techniques as well, that I don't really need to think of that. It just became automatic.
That's beautiful, man. And, you know, what you said in terms of the different repetitions, doing different things, it reminded me a lot of a concept that you tend to bring up. And, you know, it's one that I was first introduced to in my master's in operations management, speaking about supply chain. And it's a Japanese term called Kaizen, right? Which, you know, in the proper definition is incremental improvements over a long period of time, essentially being able to make things better. And the case study always used is the Toyota supply chain. But I'd love to know the context in which you use it, and more importantly, how can you apply that concept as an editor for yourself?
Well, when you think about it, when you're editing for a client, the best feeling that you can get is not the payment. It's when they praise you for your work, right? And the way you ensure that that's the case is you aim to get better in every single video that you do. Because to be truthfully honest, like, you are easily replaceable. There's always another editor out there. But the way you show your worth is if you continue to get better every single edit that you do for them. You know, that way you're constantly getting praised, you're over delivering, and you become irreplaceable. You know, and that's one thing that I've learned. You know, that there's one period in time where I was working with a client, and every edit was the same, and just like that, I lost the client because he found someone better. You know, and just learning and continuing to get better at the skill set, like, helps a lot as well.
Absolutely, man. And I think one thing that's interesting as well is when you're trying to make these improvements every time, eventually I feel like people tend to run out of ideas on what they could do better, right? So based on that, how would you say you've approached not only developing your own creativity, but also how you come up with these concepts, how you come up with these improvements for yourself?
All right. So the way in which I constantly generate new ideas is I consume with a purpose. You know, I go on social media, I scroll, even though that's like looked down upon, because there's something called doom scrolling, and you can find, and a lot of us editors, or guys in general, will find themselves stuck in that cycle. But the moment you start consuming with a purpose and start seeking inspiration in everything, that's when you can find crazy ideas. I love to watch movies. I get a lot of my ideas from movies as well, and anime. You know, I get a lot of my ideas from anime because like the animation is crazy and everything. If you actually appreciate it from an artistic standpoint, you know. But yeah, that's how I constantly generate ideas and everything.
I think that makes a little sense. It's still like an artist, right?
Yeah.
And even based on that, man, like if you're trying different things and you're improving each time, I find it interesting because the other day I was going on your profile and I see you've reposted on your stories some guys saying they're editing in Josh style, right? So if you're trying all these different things and you're trying to improve every time, beyond that, how would you say you've been able to kind of develop a style that is uniquely your own and that people from around the world who have never seen you before are able to recognize and want to replicate with your name on it?
Yeah. Going back to what you're saying about Josh's style, like that's probably one of the best feelings you can have as an editor or as a creative in general when you're known for something. But how I was able to create my own style was essentially there's this concept called constraints. And I know, and like you can see it in like fashion, you can see it in business, and that sounds like bullshit, but like it's a true concept that you can Google. Like just type in concept and constraints and creativity, and a bunch of articles will appear. But when you think of fashion, when you think of designers, when you think of like a new season of clothing, they're bound by the style, they're bound by the color, they're bound by the aesthetic and everything. And that's how they're able to produce creations efficiently and maximize their creativity. Although it sounds counterproductive because you're limiting yourself, it actually works to your advantage, because now you set boundaries and you don't have to overwhelm yourself with creative ideas. Now, you can even see it in business. When they come up with a strategy, they're bound by the knowledge they have and information they have on the market, right? And that allows them to create a strategy that works for them and works for their current situation. So the way I implemented this in editing was I broke it down into 4 constraints that you can set for yourself. That's the color that you use, that's the font that you use, and the type of assets that you use, and also the background. And if you guys don't know what I mean by that, you can choose 2 fonts that you stick with throughout the entire video. You can choose 3 colors, the main color, the secondary color, and the third color. And you can choose a type of asset. So what I mean by type of asset, which is probably the most confusing thing, is choose an asset and stay consistent with it. So if you use realistic pictures, realistic B-roll, and everything of that nature, then it doesn't make sense to start using cartoonish assets, because then there's inconsistency and it makes the edit look cheap and like unprofessional. And then the background is just the type of background you use and everything. It's pretty self-explanatory if you're an editor, but that's pretty much it.
Amazing, man. Yeah, and I find it interesting, right? Because you were someone who was already making a name for themselves and was already someone that people would go to learn from, even before things were able to click with you financially and start actually rewarding you in a way that was comparable to the value that you were putting out. You know, there was a long period where you were doing not just a lot more work, but a lot higher quality work than you were being rewarded for. And, you know, now thankfully you're at a point where you've managed to flip that and capture the value that you're creating as well. But I'm curious, what was the thing that made it click for you that allowed the money to start coming to you based on the skills you have?
So when I was editing at a very high level and producing, like working my ass off, working like a horse, there's one thing that I noticed that I lacked, right? And that was a personal brand. There's no way for me to market myself. There was no way for me to increase my perceived value. People just saw me as an editor. You know, I didn't have case studies to leverage. I didn't have testimonials to leverage. And no one could see the types of clients that I worked with, even though I worked with multiple 7 to 8 figure entrepreneurs. In their eyes, I was just as good as someone who was just beginning. That's the reason why I wasn't able to make as much money as I could have. But when I started my personal brand and I started to post my content, I started to market myself properly, which again is probably the most important skill set you can learn as an editor. You can be the best editor in the world, but if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to position yourself, and if you don't know how to run a business, you're cooked. Because you're going to be trapped to that certain earning level where your perceived value is super low, right? That's where it all started. That's where I was able to start earning more because my perceived value increased, you know? Like if an editor was working for Im and Gaji, their perceived value would be ultimately higher. You just automatically expect them to be charging premium prices because of who they've worked with. And that's when it clicked for me, you know? Not only that, I was able to build an audience for myself based on the skill set that I worked on. You know, I had people coming to me wanting to learn how to edit and everything like that. So with video editing, I learned that there was multiple avenues of monetization through clients and through teaching people how to edit. And that's how I came up with CATNA as well. But yeah, that's essentially how everything clicked. You know, it all started from my personal brand.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I remember when you started the account as well, around this time last year. And I remember even within a few weeks of posting a piece here and there, you were already getting people asking to work with you, asking for your prices, asking how things were working. So even based on that, if you had to give advice to someone on how to actually start creating what is essentially a digital portfolio for themselves as their personal brand, what would that look like?
So I'm about to drop some sauce, but this is an outreach method that we teach in CATNA, and it builds your portfolio, helps you level up your skill set. It's optimized for inbound leads, and you're directly targeting your prospect, right? And the whole premise of it is leading with value. So what we do is we find people in our niche, the niches that we're targeting, right? And we check if they're taking content seriously. We check if their business relies on content, and if they're making money, most importantly, and also if they're posting on YouTube. Then we'll go to their YouTube channel. We'll clip something up from their YouTube channel, edit it up in their niche style or in their style but better, and we'll post it. We'll post it on our accounts and everything like that. And what that does, and tag them. We'll post in our story. We'll tag them. We'll send it to their DMs and tag them. That way, we're getting their attention in all avenues. You know, if you're just sending a message, they're not going to really see it. And everyone's sending messages now. But this way, we're leading with value because we're already doing the work for them. You know, and it builds up our portfolio. You know, because I've had a few students who did that, and they didn't even get the original prospect didn't get back to them, but they get a ton of inbounds. You know, so you're getting views, you're posting content, you're working on your skill set, you're outreaching at the same time. It's such a cracked method. But yeah, that's how I would help recommend them to build up their portfolio whilst also potentially earning whilst they're doing it.
100%. At the end of the day, you're also earning experience, right?
Yeah.
Putting in the reps and doing that. And sometimes you have to chase after the experience rather than waiting for it to be handed for you, right? And we'll go into, because you mentioned CATNA and how that's a skill that you teach within there, and we'll dive a lot further into that. But I wanted to ask you also on a personal level, the original account you opened on Instagram was hacked, taken down at 5,000 followers. And I remember when that happened telling you it's only a matter of time before you take your current one to 10. And I'm still fully backing that and believing that it will come to bear. But when it comes to the actual number of followers you had, and more importantly, the type of content you're posting, how can you say someone can be intentional and almost reverse engineer the outcome they're looking for with the content that they create?
Before I actually go into the answer, I'm going to point out the biggest mistake that people do with their content online, especially if they're trying to sell something, right? And that's not understanding their customer profile, right? A lot of people, especially, and what I've noticed is a lot of editors will want to sell to clients, but they're making content for video editors. So you need to understand your client profile, your ICP, right? And the way in which you do that is you look at people who are making content. Well, you look at people who are selling the exact same service as you, who are posting content that is attracting clients, and reverse engineering what they're doing, or implementing the SLA method, which is the steal like an artist method. Because again, everything online is a remix of something else, right? And that's just one pillar, which is what I like to call value-based content, right? Because this type of content is optimized to go viral. This type of content is optimized to generate you views, right? Now, the way in which you actually nurture these guys and get them to reach out to you and become an inbound is when you drop in insight-based content, right? And this is content on not exactly what to do to achieve X, but why X helped you achieve X, how X helped you achieve X. You know, it's insight, not step by step. Because when you start giving out value and you only rely on value, you're only giving away free things, and you're training your audience to expect free things from you. So when you actually sell something, then it doesn't really work out because there's no curiosity built around your product or service that you're selling, you know? And that's one of the main reasons I managed to funnel people into CATNA, you know? Like if you notice in a lot of my posts, I don't really give that much value. I don't tell people exactly what to do. I tell people how X achieved X, why X achieved X, why this outreach method helped X achieve X, you know? That way they're curious. They know about the results that we get, but they don't know how to. And that's how I've been able to build curiosity and build interest around the product I'm selling, which is CATNA.
Oh, 100%, man. I think, we've touched on selling CATNA. We've touched on a couple of tactics that you teach within there. I really wanted to dedicate quite a bit of this conversation into the actual skill set that you teach within there, right? So before getting into that in the first place, like, if you could break it down in its simplest possible terms, what is CATNA?
It's a program for video editors. So we help editors build and scale and monetize their personal brand, to keep it simple, right? But it's more than just a program. It's an actual community, which I feel like a lot of like online programs are lacking, the community aspect, you know? And that's why people like, because again, like, to put it into perspective, my main competitor has 240K followers on Instagram, you know? And he has only 75 members in his program. I have 0.01% of his following, and I have 86 members, you know? The reason why is because, like, I've built a community, and, like, I'm not the only one that's marketing it. Everyone else is marketing it for me, and I'm not paying them to do it. It's because the community is so good that people want to be a part of it, you know? So, yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but...
No, definitely. And I think it's an amazing product. And more than anything, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, it's the best one I've seen out there to take someone, essentially what we said earlier, to go from a beginner to someone who's actually doing something within the space and being able to level themselves up.
Yeah.
And tying it back to the giveaway that we mentioned right at the start. So for this episode, Josh has been kind enough to offer 2 people free lifetime memberships into CATNA, into his program. And essentially for this giveaway, what we're doing is we're picking 2 comments from the comment section here. So make sure you're subscribed and you drop your comment. Just let me know the biggest takeaway you got, or the biggest lesson, or the biggest thing you're going to implement, or the thing you like most about Josh. Within the next week, we're going to go through it, and then we'll select the 2 winners and reach out to you then. But again, things that editors can actually learn from. There's a couple of key points that I wanted to start out with, right? Because someone looking to start into any business or any service offering is always going to ask themselves the question, is this oversaturated? Right? And especially with editing, when you go on Fiverr and you see some people from, you know, different countries around the world that are offering $2 to make a short form reel, or offering these really low prices, and you think to yourself, how can I even compete with that if my time is going to be worth, you know, $2 for the 2 hours that it's going to take me to put into this? How am I going to scale? So based on that, how would you approach this question of, is it oversaturated?
I mean, in a sense of like the amount of people that are editing out there, it is saturated, but I don't think the market has sophisticated enough. You know, there's still a bunch of guys who know how to edit but don't know how to deliver service. There's still a bunch of guys who know how to edit but don't really know how to talk to clients and everything like that. And that's the issue that I've seen with a lot of guys on Fiverr, or these just editors charging super low. They don't know how to talk to a client. They don't know how to deliver a service. They don't know how to sell themselves. They don't know any of that, you know? And the moment that happens is when the market becomes saturated. Right now, it's so easy to become a top 1% editor. You just need to learn those basic skill sets of service delivery, client acquisition, business, you know? Because that's how you end up winning. That's why there's so many editors right now. Because just recently, there was a guy who joined CATNA. He started from zero. He's based in Argentina, right? And he was on 0 followers, $0 made. I actually connected him with Tal as well. And
shout out Tal.
Yeah. And he's now making 3K per month. It's insane. And he's from a third world country as well. You know, because he's learned the skill set of business, you know, not only editing. He's not the best editor. He just knows how to market himself and sell himself, you know? And that's why, like, I don't think the market is saturated when it comes to that. And that's everything we teach in CATNA as well. We teach you how to position yourself.
Definitely, yeah. Learn how to stand out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to the person who's starting out from zero, is looking to get into video editing, their skill set is close to non-existent,
Yeah.
but they like how things look and they like the idea of getting into it. What would you say are the first few steps that someone could take?
Give free value. Work for free. You know, I mean, when I first started in that agency, I was working for free for a good like month or two, you know, and you're working with a client for free for a good month or two. But especially if it's someone like who what I like to call a unicorn client, and these unicorn clients have money, they have the potential for you to grow, and it's just a big opportunity. Fuck yeah, work for free. Because again, like if you kill it for them, you over deliver for them, you get them results, and they like you as a person, they'll reward you. Because that's how I was able, well, that's how the agency was able to make their first 10K per month. You know, we worked for free for 2 months. He liked us, he ended up paying us 2.5K and referred 4 other people that paid 2.5K, you know? And like, that's what I've seen, you know, like a bunch of guys, like even in the Irish method that I recently spoke about, we're technically doing free work for them, you know, but we'll end up getting rewarded in the end, you know, in experience, in potential clients, in referrals, and leveling up our skill sets, and also positioning ourselves and getting attention around our work. So yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask about free work as well. I mean, you definitely touched on that, but beyond working for free, of course, people are getting into a service delivery ideally because they're passionate about it and they want to create, and you know, it's a creative, artistic endeavor, but they want to get paid for it. So when it comes to pricing, how do you recommend people approach that, especially when they're starting out and then, you know, as a part two, as they're developing and growing their skill set?
I actually spoke about this recently in a coaching call that we have in CATNA. But when it comes to pricing, you want to price competitively. Because the truth is, a lot of you guys will get inbounds from these business owners and coaches and everything asking, oh, how much do you charge for this? But they're asking every other editor that you probably know of the same question. So that's why you want to price competitively, you know? The more value, the more you increase your perceived value by building up case studies, having testimonials and clientele, that will give you more authority to charge premium prices. Like I said at the beginning, when you've worked with someone of high leverage like Iman Gaji, naturally you're expected to be charging more, you know? Like if you had like 2 million subscribers and you were famous all around the world, you know, naturally like people would expect me to be charging a lot more. You know, when you look at my personal brand on Instagram, you wouldn't expect me to be charging $5 per edit, you know? But yeah, that's how I would tackle pricing.
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, as the clients you work with grow, your stature would also grow through association as well, right? And even going back to the question of DMing, outreach, and actually getting in front of these people, you know, you mentioned doing free samples, sending it over to them, posting stuff on your own page. You know, from personal experience, I've had a lot of people DM me. I've probably replied to 2, and those 2 were people who had sent their work. No one had sent me my own chopped up work, but realistically, you know, I'm not even posting on Instagram, just using YouTube for the time being, at least as of recording. But when it comes to actually grabbing someone's attention through the DMs, right? Especially if it's someone that you'd really like to work with, right? Maybe your dream 100 people. How do you actually approach that message? In terms of how you position yourself, do you always send a video to go with it? Do you always pitch your price? Do you just try to start a conversation? Like, what's the hook? Like, what are you doing to try to get a reply from them?
So in terms of with these guys who have crazy leverage, who are super rich and your dream client, right? They're probably not going to be in their DMs all day. They probably have appointment sessions for that, you know? So a simple message will not cut, right? And the reason why is because they also don't have time if you try to have a conversation with them. Business owners, they don't have time to have conversations, especially if you're trying to sell to them, because they're being sold to every single day. That's why we go with a lead with value first approach, because again, like, we get their attention from the story notification. You know how you get that little bubble on Instagram when you get tagged in a story? We get their attention through their tagged section on Instagram, their normal notifications, and their messages, right? Because then they'll be able to see like our actual work. They'll be able to see us outreaching to them and everything. Because again, like an appointment setter or a VA is constantly scanning their DMs. You know, a VA might just open up your message and see that they're being sold to and just ignore it. You know, your DM's gonna get forgotten about. But again, don't be disheartened if they don't respond, right? So I'd advise you to just continue following up with them. You know, just a simple message saying, hey, something genuine. I made this free sample for you. Feel free to post it if you want, you know? And that's worked so well that I've had these guys take screenshots of my students' outreach, post it on their story and said, if you want to get clients, this is the best way to do it, you know? Because these guys are tired of getting sold to every single day. And that's why, like, it's probably the best outreach method to do right now. I'm going to call it the CATNA method. You know, originally I called it the art of reciprocation, but it's a bit long. You know, but it's reciprocating the same value. You're giving them a free sample, they're going to give you their attention. So, yeah.
I like it. Brand that thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, you mentioned clients specifically reaching out to these prospects, right? I know for a fact that you've worked with some really good clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you've also had clients that, you know, the client experience would probably border on nightmarish.
Yeah.
What would you say actually makes a good client for someone to work on?
A good client, someone who has their business together. I've worked with so many people who've had their businesses falling apart, and it's probably the worst experience that you could potentially have, you know? But someone who's also willing to give you an opportunity to grow, and someone who values like people, you know? Because again, people is what makes their business run. And if they don't value you, then it's probably not worth your time. And their business is probably going to stagnate or fail in the future. You know, why do you think these like corporate companies are investing hundreds and thousands on people every single year? It's to scale the business, you know? So they need to give you an opportunity to grow. They need to value you and put your goals first before the business, because if you succeed, then the business succeeds. And it's the same exact thing that I've implemented with my team right now. If they win, I win, you know? But that way, like, you're a lot more incentivized to crush it for that client and over deliver, you know? But yeah, that's what I would say to that question.
Definitely insightful. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you've just started working with a client, what would you say are like the fastest red flags you can pick up on to see that they're going to be a bad client relatively quickly?
Probably the communication, you know? If the communication is terrible, like, don't waste your time, you know? Because again, I would hate, because when you're collecting payment, if that's ever the case, and the communication is bad to begin with, don't expect to get paid, because then they're probably not going to reply to you. That's like the biggest red flag that I would point out, communication.
So when you're starting out, you're naturally going to have to come across bad clients. And in the end of the day, as with any kind of service you offer, at least in my experience, you have to go through bad clients to be able to understand and even value what a good client is.
Yeah.
One thing that I've found kind of across industries to people that I've spoken to is not only the more valuable, but the more specialized that you make yourself, the easier things tend to be for you, right? So based on that specifically, I'm curious, would you recommend for someone starting out to either take the approach of trying to work with anyone they can and trying to fit into any kind of style and context that that person is already using, or trying to create their own version of the Josh style, right? Mm-hmm. Like create their own identity that is associated with them that they then go and push to people, if that makes sense. So whether you go for broad or you really go for, this is me, this is what I'm offering you.
Yeah. So one thing I would do, and one thing I would probably recommend, is going broad, you know? The reason why is because in the online space, everyone follows trends. If there's one trending style, someone will follow that, you know? the way in which you build your own style and you become known for it is you build it through someone else. You know, Iman Gaji's style, like he didn't create the style, the editor created his style. You know, so that's why I recommend going broad, because there's so many more opportunities out there for you. If you spend your time reinventing the wheel, you're actually going to do more harm than good. Because although you're creating your own style, no one wants it. There's no point selling something that no one wants. You know, but if you have an existing client that's already paying you and he's well known and he's someone of high net worth, you can build your own legacy through that client, you know, and that's what I'd recommend. So go broad, find as many unicorn clients as possible and build your legacy through them as well, because you're basically getting paid to create. So yeah.
I like that. I think there's definitely, you know, the two sides to the coin, right? And when you're starting out, I think that does make more sense. You know, being able to get reps in through getting people in through the door, and definitely by going broad is going to give you the best chance to do that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas eventually, maybe as you're looking to level yourself up and as you're looking to be able to charge more and work more with specific people, maybe then you can dial in your style and create your own Josh style.
Yeah.
In your own name. But even when it comes to, you know, actually doing that specifically, you know, one thing I wanted to mention right at the start is in terms of software, right? Because you mentioned you started out on CapCut. I know for the longest time, that's all you were using, all you were vouching for. It's probably also the easiest one to start with from the limited experience I have. Have you then switched on to others? Have you trialed a few to know what you like the most? And more than anything, what would you recommend people maybe start with and eventually graduate to?
So I've actually worked on every software. I mean, every software, but DaVinci, right? And if I were to recommend someone to start with, it ultimately depends on your PC specs. It depends on the facilities that you have and everything, right? If you're not that blessed with a nice laptop, a nice setup, and everything like that, go for CapCut. It's a lot more friendlier, and it gives you the ability to earn whilst working on the passion that you have, that skill set that you have. So essentially, what I went through, I didn't have the ability to like edit on Premiere Pro or Adobe After Effects. That's why I was kind of forced to edit on CapCut and everything until I was able to have enough money to upgrade or be in a position to upgrade, you know? So that's why like there is no best software or program that you can use. It just depends on your circumstances, you know? Because again, like the skills that you learn on one program is transferable to the other one. You know, you just have to get used to the layout, you have to get used to the shortcuts, but everything is pretty much transferable, you know? Even then, like, even if you're editing on CapCut, Premiere Pro, or After Effects, you're working on your creativity as well. So, like, there is no downside to each software. It just depends on the circumstance and everything.
Definitely, man. And to, you know, wrap up slightly on CATNA, because I do want to touch on service delivery specifically. I'd love to know about your experience through your students, right? So what would you say is the thing that all the students you have that succeed have been able to share between them?
I think the biggest trait is just understanding business and understanding that the inputs today will lead in the outputs in like 3-4 months. A lot of guys, and I know like I've seen this in, well, it's not editing communities, but like business, like other programs and mentorships and everything. They join something with the mindset of getting instant results, you know, but in reality, we can only point you in the right direction, you know, and these guys, they understand that. These guys, they understand that they need to put these inputs in every single day to achieve X outcome. And because they did those inputs every single day that I told them to do and that what we teach, they've hit those 3 to 4K per month with video editing alone, you know? And that's probably the best like trait that I've seen, just understanding that like they actually have to work for the results that they want, you know, and not be lazy. Again, it's also like just having that constant drive to learn as well. Because again, like those who are constantly leveling up their skill sets, those who are constantly putting in the hours every single day is who ultimately ends up on top. But yeah.
And, you know, in the calls you take, the conversations you have, what would you say is the advice that you tend to repeat the most to people?
I think it's like just daily inputs. I'm not sure if other communities do this, but like these guys, they always post their daily accountabilities. And if you don't know what it is, we just like post our daily task every single day for everyone to see, you know? And we keep each other accountable. That's why CATNA is so good as a community, because it's more than just an editing program. We're a community that actually keep each other accountable and help each other achieve our goals, which is rare. You know, I've been in so many editing communities, so many programs and everything like that. And like, that's one thing I wanted to build differently with CATNA, just the community aspect. And I've had so many people tell me that, like, this is like no other editing community. And like, this is no bullshit. Like, this is, like, you can talk to anyone in CATNA, right? And they will say the exact same words that came out of my mouth just right now, you know? Because like, that's how we're all able to achieve our goals as well. So yeah.
I love that, man. And, you know, it's clear that you've built something really cool, really special there.
Yeah.
And, you know, for the viewer, don't forget, drop your comments. Let us know what you learned. Do something that catches our attention. And we have those 2 spots, lifetime spots, that we'll be giving away as well. But yeah, just before wrapping up, to touch on service delivery as a whole, because I think there's a lot of value that we can get from it. And, you know, we've been kind of dipping in and out of the subject throughout the conversation. But when I think about editing, I always see it as not just visual, but artistic, right? And I think there's a few things we can draw from that. And you touched on finding inspiration, and, you know, you even mentioned like almost reverse doom scrolling, like being intentional with it. But if you were to give a tip in terms of being practical with that, right? So like, how would one actually approach Instagram or TikTok or whatever they're surfing in, YouTube Shorts, and be intentional with what they're consuming so that they're actually building their creativity muscle?
So I do believe, like, first you need to understand the niche that your client is in, right? And like, study the content and study the edits in that niche, in that specific niche, right? Because what I've noticed is a lot of editors will edit for in the eyes of an editor to impress other editors, right? So what they'll do is, if they're editing for a sales coach, they'll make that piece of content like crazy. And what that will do is it will attract a bunch of editors who are just interested in that editing style, not necessarily the ICP of that sales coach, you know? So you're kind of like, even though like it's good that you're doing all these creative aspects and crushing it with the edits, but you're not really doing him any justice if you're just going to attract a bunch of editors instead of his ICP. The whole goal of editing is to make sure that the value that is being spoken is easily and seamlessly translatable to the audience. You know, it has to be easily digestible. And that's the whole goal of editing. You know, you don't want to make everything look cool. You can do that for your own content. But if you're doing it for your clients, understand the niche that they're in. You know, study their competitors, study the content that's going out in that niche and everything. And that's what I'd recommend for that question.
I think that's great advice. And, you know, even drawing on that, how would you say you can tell when to make something flashier and, you know, more eye-catching versus making something very simple and to the point? Like, what is it that determines which direction to go for you?
I think it's determined by the topic of the subject. For you, for example, like, your edits would be more flashier and everything because, again, like, it's much more creative freedom, you know. But in terms of a coach, in terms of a business owner, the best we can do is simplify the value that's being put out in a visual graphic. You know, that's the best way to put it. Because, again, you don't want to do anything over the top that's going to confuse the viewer. Because, again, you need to edit in the eyes of someone who doesn't understand anything. in that niche. You know, someone who find it difficult to grasp the concepts, because again, like, people are visual learners, and if there's visual aid, it becomes easier to understand concepts as well. That's why I like reading books with pictures. But yeah.
What a guy. What a guy. And when it comes to actually being able to differentiate between making content that gets the most amount of views possible versus making content that specifically gets the views of who you're looking to get, how would you say you change the approach in the editing or maybe even in the scripting process, right? Like, I know you've had clients that are looking to sell a specific type of product, or other clients that are just looking to go viral, right? How does the approach differentiate in how you actually like go into editing that piece or helping them create it in the first place?
I see. So it's not really about the editing, but the content idea and the scripting itself. You know, in my cohort, I split it up into two things. There's your ideal customer and there's your ideal viewer. If you want to get views, you target your ideal viewer, right? Because let's say if you're specifically targeting the person you want to sell to, right? And your hook is, if you're a 40-year-old mom trying to lose weight, here are the top 3 exercises. You're directly targeting the person you want to sell to, but again, like, not everyone is going to watch it because no one's going to resonate with it, right? The algorithm isn't going to push out your content because no one's going to watch it, you know? So if you really want to get eyeballs and also benefit from the algorithm and get more people who actually want to buy from you down consuming your content, you go broader. You target the niche as a whole, which is your ideal viewer. So if you're helping people lose weight, you're targeting the fitness niche. Everyone in the fitness niche is your ideal viewer now. So you could be like, your hook could be like, if you're trying to achieve your dream body by summer, here are the top 3 exercises that you can do. And now you're appealing to a lot more people because everybody will watch your piece of content now. I know those are shit examples of hooks, but I hope that makes sense.
No, definitely. And even beyond that, would you say you've seen enough content and edited enough content at this point to be able to tell when something's going to go well, at least in short form?
Yes, there's so many like differentiate. I mean, there's so many factors that determine whether a video goes viral or not. You know, I know I haven't gone viral, but I've worked with a lot of people and I've worked with a lot of like viral gurus to understand the space and everything. So like the way you look is very important. You know, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself, your hairstyle and everything, because again, that's what catches attention. You know, your editing style plays a huge role as well, but also your hook as well. You know, you want to make sure your hook is targeting an extreme pain or extreme desire that your ideal viewer or ideal customer is facing or wants, and that's essentially how you drag them in as well. It's also giving people a reason to watch. The one thing I like to have after the hook is what I like to call an amplifier. It's what gives people a reason to watch. You know, I could say, oh, here are the top 3 exercises to lose weight. And then I could back it up with social proof. You know, in the last 3 months, I've been doing these 3 exercises to achieve this dream body. You know, and it gives people a reason to watch your video now because there's proof behind it. You know, and that's what I've seen works really well.
Very nice. And I remember a while back we were working on a video, which wasn't my best performing video, but you told me about a tactic that you use that I find super interesting with the pen in terms of when you get distracted.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to kind of go into that as a way of almost knowing how retention for videos are going to go.
Yeah. I mean, I got it from this productivity hack. And the hack is to essentially like kill procrastination and everything like that. And it's called the 5-minute rule. If you can stick and commit to something for 5 minutes, then you're pretty much good to go to complete the whole task. If you find yourself distracted, then it's a good time for you to take a break. And I kind of like reverse engineered that and implemented it into content. So if you find yourself like picking up a pen, going on your phone whilst watching your video, then it's probably a sign that people aren't going to be engaged and people aren't going to be retained. You know, Like if you find yourself like picking up a pen, as simple as picking up a pen and playing around with it whilst watching your video, and you're not hooked and you're not engaged, then there's probably a telltale sign, you know? But yeah.
I like that. I like that one. I always found it interesting to think about, even in the production process, right? Because in the end of the day, you know, you can make an edit as good as you want, and I'm sure, especially within the channel itself, the edit quality is only going to keep getting higher and higher, considering the people we're bringing on and everything we're doing beyond that. And then just finally on service delivery, and you know, maybe a wider subject itself, but AI. A bunch of people will say that all kinds of different jobs will be lost to AI. Editing specifically, there's already Opus Pro, which I've tried out in the past, and you know, has its advantages, definitely isn't great. How would you say editors as a whole should be looking at AI?
As cliche and cheesy as it sounds, like I don't think we should be scared of AI for another like 10, 15 years. Because like it will never replace the creativity that we have right now. Maybe for other skill sets, and no disrespect, maybe for writing or something like that, it might have a huge impact. But in terms of editing, like it's so hard to replicate what some editors are doing on AI, you know? So, and plus AI, like you can do the basics of like auto-generating captions or cutting up your video or clipping up your things. But even then, there's errors in that, you know? So we wouldn't have to worry about it for a while as of now. But again, we can also use AI to support us as well, to make our workflows a lot faster, to become more efficient. Because the faster we work, the more tasks that we get done, the more time we have to make more money. And that's the benefit of AI first. So I don't think we should be scared. We should use it more as a tool. But yeah.
100%. I mean, I don't know about the 10 to 15 years, just because the way things are going nowadays. Give it 2 years and you never know where we're at, just globally in terms of the landscape. But even within that, like, are there any, and maybe not, but are there any specific tools that use AI, or even like plugins within what you use to edit that you'd be able to bring up, or that you use more consistently to do certain tasks for you?
The crazy thing is, no. And like the guys in CATNA, like these guys don't barely use AI, you know, to help them with the editing or anything. There's Mid-Journey, and we generate assets through that. But that's just generating as assets. It's not actually editing the video for us, you know? Shout out to Some Magic. I'm playing. I'm not actually sponsored by them. I just did one promo post.
You did one promo.
One paid promo post.
Let's go.
But again, it's like, I use Some Magic at times when I don't want to animate the captions or things of that nature, and it just makes life a whole lot easier and a lot quicker as well. But that's the only time I'd find myself using AI to help me with my editing.
No, I appreciate that. I think we've covered a lot of ground, a lot of value. One thing that I'd like to introduce for every guest at the end is I'd like you to share a quote, a story, an anecdote, a passage, anything that comes to mind that you'd like to leave the viewer with at the end.
Yeah, so the inputs that you put in today will lead into the results not tomorrow, but maybe a week or a month's time, or even a year's time, you know? And like the inputs I was putting in a year ago led to the results and the position I'm in today. You know, I wouldn't be sat here filming this podcast if I didn't edit a video every single day. You know, I wouldn't have my paid program if I didn't sit there and edit a video every single day and work on my personal brand. You know, so that's what I'd like to leave with the viewer. The inputs that you put in today will lead into the results into the future and everything. So yeah.
I think it's a great message, and you know, delayed gratification applies across life, whether that's the diet you eat, the workouts you do, the reading you do, the consumption, the things you don't do, right? The things you stop yourself from partaking in, all add up, you know, and the compound effect, and even the Kaizen principle that you speak about, to do the 1% better every day, it adds up over time. And honestly, man, I think you're the perfect encapsulation of that. And I see the hard work you've put in over the last year. I know firsthand the hard work you've put into this channel alongside me to get it to where we are. And for that, I'm only grateful. And the best part, for me at least, is that I know you're still just getting started and we have so much further to go, both on this and yourself with what you're doing with CATNA and beyond. So yeah, man, just appreciate you. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for being you.
I appreciate it. And one last thing I'd like to add is, when I was in my worst point in life, I met Antonio, and I was in minus 2,000. Like, I was down bad, right? And I did end up speaking with Antonio. I had like a few deep conversations and everything. And he told me, like, this time next year, you will be making 5 to 10K per month, you know, as long as I stick to the plan, as long as I stick to the goal, you know. And fast forward this time this year, I'm in a better position, you know, and he essentially predicted the future, you know. So yeah, I just like to leave that there as well.
No, yeah, man. I think it was pretty evident considering the trajectory you were on. And sometimes when you're in the dumps, it's hard to see for yourself where things are heading and the direction you're actually going in. And sometimes you need that bird's eye view, you know, the third person perspective to really lay it out to you, you know. And I'm grateful in my life I've had people that have been able to put things into context for me, and you know, I'm glad to have been able to help out in any way I have for yourself, man. But guys, with that being said, don't forget to leave your comments. The giveaway is going on. I'm looking forward to checking out what you guys found of value and definitely what you've learned from Josh during the conversation. If you want to see some of his work in action, check out this video over here. And if you want to see another episode from this series that we're putting out every week, check out this one.